So, Chris, this week, what everyone is really wondering is which company has the best AI model end of 2025, and will you win or lose your bet? So let's take a look at the current betting market. I feel like we're kind of sponsored. You know how every sport now is sponsored by some sort of gambling thing?
Yeah. There's a few things I watch where they're like, "Have you heard of Polymarket?" And I'm like, "We're not even being paid for this."
Yeah, we're just freely promoting it stupidly.
And sorry, not only are we not being paid, I'm losing money every day. It's
Yeah.
depressing.
It really
I don't
fits
like it.
with the averageness of the podcast. But anyway, so you bet that Google will not have the best model it's not the end of this year though. Have I even got the
End
right
of May.
one?
End of May. So they do it.
Oh,
They do it
okay.
once a month, and it's based on what the LMCIS ratings are. Is there sort of like at the stroke of midnight, Cinderella loses her shoes, and they decide who has the best AI model.
So you know what's funny? Because I had the wrong one up on the screen. I was like, oh, your odds aren't that bad. But in fact, now I've switched to the correct one. This is
Look
a
at
terrible
it. It's virtually
scenario.
gone straight up and to the right since I declared that it was wrong. Time's on their side, right? Because they do currently have the best model. So in the absence of someone else trumping it, they're going to win. And I guess we also know that the Google I/O announcement's coming. So presumably they'll have something even better. So 80% probably does seem about accurate right now in terms of them having the best.
It was like they saw your bet, and then last week, not only did they sort of be like, we've got the best model, but then Logan and various other Google people announced on X that Gemini 2.5 Pro had gotten this upgrade, and now it was even better at coding and had significant gains. So I guess it hasn't worked out terribly well for you at all.
Well, this is why I'm not like a stock trader or any of those things, because I'm not good. But, I guess my point was that anything can change with this stuff. And we've seen people leapfrogging each other in this space. And I was thinking, what are the odds that none of them are going to come back? We really haven't seen major advancements from OpenAI in a long time. And I do find it absolutely crazy for all the talk there is around things like O3 and its tool calling abilities and stuff, that OpenAI has a 3% chance of having the best model at the end of the month. Like, the people who started it all, the people who everybody loves, are just not even close. Like, that's kind of crazy.
They are literally on par with DeepSeek in the poly market betting. What DeepSeek just dropped before my eyes to 2%. Oh no, now it's back to 3%. With OpenAI,
Like live trade on the podcast. But yeah, it just blows my mind that it's so low, and that they have so much faith that XAI, which is significantly higher, is going to somehow come out with a better model than OpenAI and Google. I just don't see that happening.
yeah, I think right now it's really hard to see anyone announcing a model and then that model becoming the leader on LMCIS within roughly 10 days. Even if Anthropic, which it's rumored in the next maybe week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whenever, announces an update to Claude Sonnet, and apparently there's a new Claude Opus coming, you would also think, maybe that raises their chances a little bit here. But ultimately, I just don't think they would have time. So it seems like this month, at least, Google's going to come out on top. And you've got I/O next week. I don't know, there's a lot of rumors or some speculation I've read that, we'll hear about an entirely new model. And people have been speculating that name is Gemini Ultra. And I don't know if that's what we're going to get. I think it's just going to be a lot of different sort of app-based announcements around the models, as opposed to necessarily some new glorious model. But maybe I'll be proven wrong. And I should put my money where my mouth is, potentially.
Don't do it. It's not worth it. But yeah, I agree. I think it feels like a lot of the announcements lately from the major AI providers are definitely around the tooling associated with models rather than the models themselves, in that we feel like we've hit a sort of plateau in terms of the major advancements of models. Like, we're not going to have a GPT-4 moment anytime soon. It's more like, okay, here's what the MCPs can do. Here's what the skills can do. Here's where we're at with computer use and those kind of things.
Yeah, it was interesting with the announcement of Gemini 2.5, at least the update. After that came out, there was a lot of instability issues, which we experienced ourselves with the Gemini 2.5 Pro model when we switched over to this new preview update. There was things like timeouts. Some people felt like it was dumber now, like they had improved in certain areas and regressed in others. I found this post over on X by one of the guys at Klein. He said, "Hey, Klein users, we've been getting a lot of feedback that Gemini feels slower, dumber, and less usable lately. You're not wrong. It's been rough." And then he goes into outline, what could be the cause of this. And he just talks about the actual performance of their API and their, the throughput of tokens. And sometimes the API just doesn't work. It's slow response times. But what's interesting is we've gone from literally trash talking Google, laughing at their failures, to now at least developers and client users, by the looks of it, have become so reliant all of a sudden on Gemini 2.5 that people actually care when it's down. Like, people notice. Like, they must feel good about that. Like, people now notice that they have poor API performance.
Yeah, and to some degree, they hide behind their whole experimental label. Like, even though we label it as Gemini 2.5 Pro, when you use the model tag, it has experimental 0506 in the title. So they can sort of say, oh, well, don't expect it to work all the time. It's still an experimental model. But my argument is we're paying full price for the thing. Like, we're paying for it. That is professional. Like, if you're paying for something at that level, it should be reliable. It shouldn't be able to say, oh, no, actually, it's just experimental, so you can't expect it to work every time. I think that's a bit of a cop-out. And you would hope at this event that they would say this is now in full production mode with the full might of Google behind it.
Yeah, I think it just speaks to how far it's ahead right now, that there is so much demand, and when there is problems, you see all of the heavy users, at least on X, in outrage immediately. And I know through our own community over on Sim Theory, like, people immediately notice, right? Whereas you only have to look at the usage there alone to see how far really Gemini is now ahead of the other models. And it is interesting, though, in my own experience, I still find myself at times going back to Claude 3.7, and I have been playing around a fair bit with GPT 4.1, which I really do like the tune of that model. The only problem is you just have to iterate a lot more with it. It doesn't blindly sort of output tokens like the other models do to give you like huge chunks of writing or code or whatever it is that you're looking for. So I still think there is some need occasionally to switch. And as I said to you the other day, when we were experiencing problems with Gemini 2.5, I was so quick to switch back to Claude Sonnet and not really notice that much of a difference at all.
I agree. I just do it without a thought. If there's an issue with the model, I don't spend time sitting around worrying about when it'll come back. I'll just jump over to something else and just continue on. Like, they're all pretty much the same. Though this week, I really did have a moment where Gemini 2.5 blew my mind. There was some changes in code that were really confusing. I couldn't understand why it had broken. And so I gave it the before and after of two different files and said, look, here's everything that's changed. Here's what's happening. Can you figure out what's going on? And it wrote back like a 4-page breakdown of its logic of going through, checking everything, and talking about the likelihood of it being certain things. And then it concluded the most likely thing is this piece of code here. Why don't you try reverting this bit and see if that fixes your problem? And it nailed it. Like, first go. It was absolutely brilliant and not an obvious solution at all. And I was just really amazed by that. It took a while to get all the information in there to get it to solve the problem, but then it absolutely nailed it. And I think it's another lesson in a powerful model plus taking the time to set up the context correctly can lead to really good conclusions. And the reason I think that's important in the way we're headed with the AI technology is because the use of tools and the logic around the order in which to call those tools and how to combine things is going to become critically important. So that methodical, most likely outcome kind of thinking that Google went through there, combined with tool use, is going to be immensely powerful. So I think that those kind of attributes in a model are going to matter a lot more in the coming days than they have in the past.
Do you think this is why OpenAI is seemingly struggling? And I know I'll probably cop a lot of flack in the comments for this, but I mean, in reality, from LM Sys to the betting markets to literally every source under the sun. They by far well and truly now have the most underperforming models, especially with like code and writing and like various other elements that either Gemini's beating them at or Claude or various other models. And I get the impression that maybe because Anthropic and Gemini really early on, remember one of their claims, like Anthropic first came out with, I think it was like 100K context, and we were like mind blown on the podcast. And then over time that stepped up to Anthropic now being, I think, 200K with 3.7 Sonnet. And then with Gemini, it's up to 1 million, right? And it seems like all that early work in the training, at least on the bigger context understanding, is now probably paying off. Like you kind of question, like, do they actually have the best fundamental models? Like, is their model any more intelligent than, say, a GPT model? Probably not. But I kind of think maybe it's this context focusing that they're able to do, like in the problem you've explained, where they've just had so much more experience now at building for a bigger context that it's starting to pay off. Like, could that be one of the reasons?
It is a good point because part of what made that amazing was I literally dumped 4,000 line files in there with like my little questions and comments intermixed in between it. Like that's not easy for it to be able to identify which parts are the questions to it, which parts are the instructions, which parts are the files. And yet it was able to do that effortlessly and understand perfectly what was going on. And I would argue again, the reason I keep bringing it back to tool use and in particular like MCP tool use, where we start to get large amounts of tools available for the AI to use, is that being able to understand like what matters in a particular scenario is going to become really important when you've got, say, the results of 5 or 6 different tool calls, which can be huge amounts of data or files or images or audio or whatever they are, to take into account, as well as trying to stick to the task at hand and perhaps follow a plan. And I think you're right. I think the much larger context window, being able to continue to understand what the mission is and take that stuff into account, is going to become 50 times more important than it is now because there's going to be so much more of it.
So interestingly, and I think this sort of plays into that AI system tool calling theme, the information published, I think only yesterday, Anthropic's upcoming models will think and think some more. Now, the way they structure the storytelling in this article makes it, in my opinion, sound like some breakthrough. But I think really what's going on with what they're saying, or at least speculating is going to happen, is that it's just going to be an AI system with some really good tool calling and then some reversion where it can go off and sort of reprocess. It says the key point: if one of these models is using a tool to try and solve a problem but gets stuck, it can go back to reasoning mode to think about what's going wrong and self-correct, one of the people said. So I won't go into like too much detail, but one of the examples is, it says, for people who use the new models to generate code, which Anthropic, I mean, I think is the main consumer of the model, the models will automatically test the code they created to make sure it's running correctly. If there's a mistake, the models can stop to think about what might have gone wrong and then correct it. So it just sounds like some sort of like basic loop or recursion within their AI system with some tool calling and access to more context. It doesn't sound like anything new to me. Like, I mean, maybe training the model for that.
Yeah, and I would also argue that this is sort of already happening with chain tool calling. Like if you look at the way Claude 3.7, for example, calls tools in order, right? So say it specify, let's just not talk about simultaneous tool calls, just one at a time, right? So say you ask it to get the best bike prices in your area, right? Which I know you did recently. It might search the web for like bike prices and then get those results as the results of the tool call. Then you go back to the model with the tool call results and it says, oh, hang on a sec, I forgot to localize it to your area, right? So it does another query and then it's like, oh, I forgot to specify that it's a racing bike or whatever it is. It's already doing that kind of correction by observing the full conversation chain, what you originally asked for versus what it's actually getting in the results of its tool call. So as much as a thinking model doing that in a single step is interesting, as long as you don't mind the multi-step process of it chaining tool calls together. That's happening anyway. And I would argue it's probably better to do it that way because it actually has more information to work with rather than reevaluating its own assumptions within the same request.
I also think it gives you like that observability of it where you can sort of see if it's going wrong.
Mm.
Especially when it's doing something important for you in the background. Like you might tab over and see it like, updating account information or whatever. And you look at that and you're like, oh, it's not doing it right. Like it's not doing it in the format I wanted or however I wanted. So it allows you to observe and sort of coach, whereas doing it all in the thinking or hiding it, and there's no chance to interrupt it then because it's sort of in its own world.
This gets to the very heart of something that we spoke about probably 4 years ago now when we were talking about the potential for AI and what might come. This is before even the original GPT-3 was released, where we were saying the problem is people aren't going to trust AI to take actions of its own volition that have a real world impact. Like you're right now, even with all the latest technology, you're not going to like trust the AI to email your boss, right? Or you're not going to trust it to email your kid's school, like following up on an issue because you're like, oh, the consequences of it screwing up are so high that I can't risk it. I gave you an example yesterday. Imagine you had an MCP server that had access to like the production data for your system. So it could therefore give you insights, make crucial updates and those kind of things. That would be immensely valuable, but the last thing you would do is give it unadulterated access to make decisions as part of a thinking process without your consultation in between before it does something potentially destructive or harmful. So as much as I'm against the safety controls in AI models, this is the case where I'm thinking human in the loop, some sort of approval is crucially necessary. And so the way my thinking is going around this stuff is I actually think that the protocols around agent thinking or agent chain tool calling is going to be around it knowing when it needs to ask for your help or permission versus when it knows to just get on with the job. And I think that exposing the steps that it's going through are important in that, not just trying to encapsulate them all into some sort of one magic step.
Yeah, it like I talked to you about this through the week and then also again before we recorded that it feels a little bit like Groundhog Day, like the same ideas are just being recycled, except maybe the models and the market is a bit more ready for them now. Because if you think about when ChatGPT first sort of hit its prime, we had I don't know what they called it back then, but it was like tools or something like that, and you could connect, like I think there was like an Airbnb connector at the time, and they announced it like it was going to be the biggest game-changing thing ever, where the model could access one of those tools, and you had to be very specific. Like you had to say, I want to use the Airbnb app, and then be like, search for properties or whatever. And it did it, but it was just so slow and cumbersome that no one actually did it, and people would just go to Airbnb. Like it just didn't really solve a problem. And so I think that was like V1, right? And then agentic applications with loops have been around for like literally ever. And also the sort of like, that whole idea of like the thinking model really was just being replicated by making the, like the reflection is all you need type stuff that came out in the early days.
Step by step and like, rethink this. I mean, we replicated that ourselves simply by making it go through and question its own answers like 4 or 5 times in a row. And you get pretty good results out of it.
This is so like, and then like, so a lot of these ideas have already existed and now they're just being applied. And I think you said before the show, one of the reasons they're being applied now is because a lot of these models, at least to us, can't extract better performance out of the models. Like they're not getting exponentially better. So they're sort of saying, okay, now where can we have an impact? And my thinking is that the Anthropic team probably saw O3 or like maybe the earlier iterations with the tool calling. And I mean, O3 can be quite impressive with its ability to for the model to be calling tools as part of the thinking. It's not always very accurate. They even admitted in the paper that it's more susceptible to hallucination, which I think is kind of interesting. Uh, but it does do it, and it's quite impressive. So I think the Anthropic team is probably looking at this. Sorry, God bless. Is the pendant. And so my feeling around it is that they're saying now, okay, we're going to put tool calling in the mix in our models, like somewhat more natively, or do you think that's just going to be like, is that going to be delivered through an API, or is that just going to be like their web experience?
Yeah, and I think this is the distinction, right? Like, do you really want an API call to sort of go off and call external tools that you don't control? There's a sort of blending of the ideas, and like at which stage do they happen in the system? My argument to you has been that the whole MCP concept means that it's a lot lower effort in order to add a bunch of tools into what you're doing. Like before, like the Airbnb connector, most systems aren't going to go off and build that themselves because it's only valuable sometimes in some contexts. But when you can access hundreds or thousands of tools, fairly low effort, then suddenly it becomes interesting because you can empower your AI agent with a whole bunch of skills. And the thing I've been talking to you about all week is this idea that while the models are quite good at tool calling, it's really about when they call which tools that matter to you as the user. And you don't want them getting confused. Like, what if I have 50 MCPs available to my agent, each of which that has 10 tool calls available to it, some of which might even be called the same thing, like get customers or, list emails. What if I have 3 different email accounts connected? Suddenly it becomes extremely confusing for the AI model to know what to actually do. And so my thinking is going along the lines of we're either going to need clusters of MCPs, where it's like, okay, this agent or this assistant has access to this group of tools, and this one has access to a different group of tools, and then we have some sort of agent to agent communication that allows them to say, okay, I need to talk to the accounting assistant to get this job done, or I need to talk to the research assistant to do this one, rather than having one God agent that can do everything but never knows what to do, if that makes sense.
Do you think this is why the agent to agent protocol might actually, in theory, work? Because like large organizations could eventually provide agents as a service, which I think was the intention of the original announcement, right? And then it does have a very specific methodology of working with those tools in a way that like produces pretty reliable results. And then it's a case of like stitching the agent layer together, which is really like, I think the agent word is just thrown around so much. It's really just like an abstraction layer with different instructions and some tools, right? Like,
Yeah, like I said, it's in my mind, it's like a model with a cluster of tools that it's able to run, perhaps with some level of permission gatekeeping. And I think the other thing that we've spoken about is reproducibility. So if I have I'm just going to keep saying agent, but let's say I have an agent that has a cluster of MCP tools available and it can do certain actions. I don't want it like freestyling every time I ask it to do something, right? Like I want to make sure it has a methodology for the things it does when I ask it to do certain things. Yes, the whole advantage of AI is it having personal decision making skills where it can go, "Oh, okay, they really mean this, I'll go do this." That's valuable. But at the same time, you don't want sort of rogue agents that are just making it up as they go along each time you ask them to do a similar task.
do you think this is though why the model vendors or the labs, like it's one way to see it, like we see it from our point of view of like cluster the tooling or the MCPs into the agent and then work at that layer, right? But I guess the question is, can the model be capable of this natively? Like, can it be trained in a way to just pick the right tool and just get it, like, improve the model's performance at just picking the right MCP or tool as part of that thought chain? And is that where, because if you think about like the speculated GPT-5, really, it seems like an amalgamation of like all those models, right? Because it's just insane to be the number one consumer app and then make people pick from like 6 models in a drop down. That doesn't make sense. So it seems like it'll be amalgamated with GPT-5. that will have its own tool calling. I guess the question is are they going to build a system around the tool calling for it?
I think there has to be. And the other reason I think there has to be is an example you gave me yesterday, which is how does it know how much effort to put into a particular task? So if you're like research bike prices in my area, do you want it to spend like 25 minutes like detail researching every single source, scraping every site, getting pictures, doing comparison tables, like all this sort of stuff? Or do you literally just want an answer in 30 seconds because you're about to go out to the shops and just want a general idea? Like in the cases where it has hundreds of tools available to it, certain tasks will have depth requirements. Like, how much effort do you want me to put into this, boss? Like, is it like a day's project? Is it the 2-minute project, and so on? Because the level of effort will actually matter because the amount of things it can do could be so high. Like we alone at the moment in our own experimentation have 5 different deep research abilities available to a system. So if I ask for something to be researched, how do I know the model? How do I know if the model's just going to pick the first one it sees and run that? How do I know if it's going to run all of them? And if it does run all of them, how does it then synthesize that
But
data together?
is that just another layer where it needs to really plan and think through like the strengths and weaknesses of each tool? And like, is that, I guess what you're saying as well is like, do you want to burn tokens doing that as well? Like it because in some queries, like I think the Menace example is hilarious around this is there's a lot of examples where people ask it to do very simplistic things and it's like, I am now creating a markdown file on the computer with a plan. And it's like, no, I just want an answer, man. Like, and so I think this is really the modern challenge of these systems is like the user has the expectation that it can go and do the crazy stuff, like go and build me a full web app with a database and authentication and deploy it here and put it on this domain. But at the same time, I want to buy like a saddlebag for my road bike and I just want a quick comparison chart.
And I think the other element to think about again is the reproducibility. So say I've got some money I want to invest and I'm looking at 10 different stocks and I ask it to, research Nvidia stock because I reckon that's going to go up because of the GPUs. And it goes off and researches and gives me this really nice report. Then I ask it to go off and research Microsoft stock. And it does it a completely different way. Like it uses different sources, it uses different tools, it produces a different kind of output. Like that's not helpful for me. I need something that is going to go to the same level of effort using the same tools and the same methodology. Now, that's not always going to apply, but sometimes it will. And this is why my argument is that no model will solve that. Like no model is going to be able to universally make consistent decisions around how much effort to put in and what combination of tools it uses to do that if it's presented with hundreds of tools.
But do you think there could be a case here of, like in sim theory, we've had the skills button since day dot where you click it and you tell the model the intention. And early on, like I think it's a little bit outdated now for some things like search. It just doesn't make a ton of sense anymore, but sometimes it does. Where you like specifically say to the model, like, I want you to search. Whereas other, like, a lot of the early iterations of the model, it would just, if you give it a search tool, it would just search no matter what. And I still see this behavior on ChatGPT where sometimes like you just don't want it to search. You're like, I just want to extract the knowledge from the actual model itself. And so those skills are basically like somewhat pre-tuned prompts. Like if you want to create a landing page or a form or a survey or like whatever it is, it's a trained skill that you're sort of feeding to the model. And there was a leak or a rumor this week showing that ChatGPT is actually experimenting, interestingly, with a skills button. And one of the things we're working on is the ability to train skills. So like, say, okay, I want to do shopping research or whatever it is, or some sort of comparison. Here's roughly my methodology. Like, here's how much effort I want to spend on it. Here's what you should consider. And now this is definitely not for shopping comparison. It's more for actually getting real tasks done in the workplace. But, training those skills and instead of exposing maybe the underlying tools like the MCP, saying to the model, you have these skills, like, you have these skills. Or you can specifically say like, I don't want to muck around with this thing. being a router for me. I just want to go and process my R&D claims. So I'm going to click the R&D skill to focus in on that and then work through this claim or process.
Yes, exactly. And I think that is what I'm talking about when it comes to clustering of tools. So like you limit what's available to a particular skill. Like I know like these words, we're going to have to get better terminology, but you limit what's available to it. You give it a guideline around the effort, the methodology, what needs to happen, but then you allow it to use its intelligence within that framework to get that job done. And then you can invoke that thing specifically at the top level to say, this is the particular skill we're trying to accomplish now. So it's a lot more complex than just invoking a search skill. It's invoking a skill which itself is a collection of other things that it can do, and it's got a particular goal in mind. And then I think the layer on top of that is then, when does it ask you, is it okay to proceed? Like if it's just research, no worries. Go off in the background, take the time you need to get it done. If it's manipulating my production database, you got to ask me before you take action. So you can do all the preparation work, propose what you're going to do, put it to me, and then I decide if we're going to proceed with it or not.
And you can imagine a world too where there's all these parts of your job where you're just like, any process you identify that's fairly repetitive where AI could be useful, where it's doing some decision making or groundwork. Like I remember going back to one of our early computer use episodes, which I must admit, someone asked for a clip of the other day, and I sent it to them, and I rewatched a little bit of it, and just the like childlike excitement of it doing our like HIPAA compliance and our GDPR training quizzes and stuff for us. Which, don't worry, we're bringing back soon, and it's going to be actually like very reliable. So those are good examples of a skill. Like complete my training course, you just like train it roughly. Like you go here, you look for any training that needs to be complete, and then you go in and do it. I probably shouldn't be promoting this as the primary use case, but anyway, I think these trained skills are like much more interesting to the future of work and like how we get things done, as opposed to necessarily like relying on it firing to random MCPs. But all of these parts have a place in this AI system or stack.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what is exciting me at the moment, is seeing just the absolute masses of MCPs that are coming out is truly exciting. And the fact that there is a common protocol for them means it's very straightforward to add them to a system. Now, the question for me becomes, how do you make sure the model, no matter which model it is, uses the right combination of those at the right time and sort of knows what is needed where? Like even when you say have multiple Gmail accounts, like how does it know which one to use when you say check my mail for this or send an email to this person? Like those are all things that through a good designed software are possible. Like we can give your preferences, we can give it information it can use to deduce what to do when. And I think that that is the real advancement that's going to come. So that's why in these upcoming AI announcements, yes, I'm always grateful for new models, but it's going to be interesting to see how far along the thinking is of the major providers in terms of the practical applications of these technologies, because the pieces are there. Like the pieces are there to actually make these extremely valuable for people in their day-to-day life and get more of those things that you're currently copying and pasting in and out of an AI app for as something that can be done just from the one interface, where you're that commander that we dream of who's just saying, okay, now do this, now do that. And I really feel like we're at the point where we're going to have these different AI skills or AI workers where we're like, okay, you go research this, you go send an email saying I can't make it to that meeting. You go set a meeting with Mike. I've been sending you like regal formal calendar invites that are like 4 pages long on Google Calendar using an MCP. So now it's like if I want to schedule a meeting with someone, I'm just typing it in. And they sound so simplistic, but those things are becoming actually possible now. And I think most people are still doing them manually when they can definitely be done through an AI system now.
Yeah, I also just think like the amount of interfaces in a given day you go to right now is going to really change. Like I think the companies, like whether it's like SaaS services or even like news websites, I think is an interesting example as well. Is like, I think we're about to go through this transition where the sort of like idea of going to websites, or like the starting place of the web is like maybe search or like an application. The starting place just becomes like that AI application or AI workspace application or ChatGPT or Claude, like whatever it is that you're potentially using. Like that's the starting place of those interactions. And I can see that happening where you're doing less and less increasingly through these user interfaces, and you're having less and less of a relationship with those vendors, and potentially like the ones that begin to invest in, you know, maybe it's the agent to agent protocol with a bunch of like MCPs for their own application, where it's just, you know, you can go and consume that in your AI workspace. I think that is probably going to become a big growth area where people can benefit now. And there could also be a huge disruption where the tools that don't have that or adapt to that, you know, do fall behind, because it's like, I just want to access everything from this place that knows me.
And I think probably the next step, even beyond what we're talking about here, is the whole event driven versus polling. So it's like right now, say you're checking a sales inbox to see if there's any new sales inquiries, and you do that 6 times a day. You know, you go in, you check, oh, there's a new sales inquiry, I better get back to them at some point. The difference will be if you have a trained skill that is able to check that same inbox, has access to your pricing information, your policies, and demo information, or whatever you're providing a sales lead, setting up a calendar appointment, for example, and even qualifying that lead. Like, here are our criteria. You can go off and research this person's website and their business and know, okay, look, this is just not a, like, here, go sign up for a free trial here, or hey, I'd love to get on the phone with you straight away. That kind of thing can be automated to the point where it does all that work as it comes in. You know, like, it goes from being you having to check and then order the system to do those things, to it going, okay, I know this process, I've just gone ahead and done it, and it just works.
I guess the counter to that could be like, oh, are you just reinventing Zapier in a more complicated way? Like, a lot of these things you could argue you sort of could automate already. But I think
yes, but you could as a technical person, but I would argue that a lot of people can't. And I think there's a lot of processes along the lines I've just described in businesses where people have known for many years that it's possible to automate them, but they haven't been able to afford, or the time or the money to pay a software team to build it and then adapt it as things change. Whereas the dynamicism of an AI model and its ability to access the latest tools to those systems will be able to do it with not much effort. And I think that's the difference.
Can we come back to the sort of MCP and tool calling layer? And you, like, before you said, I'm excited to see like what these people will announce around this stuff, right? So there was a leak, like, maybe like a day ago. Let me try and find it. Yeah, here. It says the new ChatGPT web app version includes an option to add custom connectors based on model context protocol. And then they have some UI here showing some connectors. And these connectors are pretty much the most common MCPs that are available today. We know this because, like, we're doing the same thing. But then I think, okay, let's talk about just the overall strategy of this company for a minute. So MCPs blew up, like, you know, a couple of weeks ago. It seems like a year ago, but a couple of weeks ago, they really had their moment in the sun where it's like everyone on X and the people in the sort of know, or just like the most annoying voices on X, were just all they were talking about and promoting is MCPs. It's going to change everything. And I think they were partially correct, that an open protocol where you can just serve these to AIs is important. But you look at this, and it's like clear to me that Anthropic did this, and then OpenAI now just like rushing this out off the back of that being very popular, and people saying like, this is something we want, this is something we should have, right? And I don't think it's that dissimilar to us, like us discovering the MCP protocol and saying like, hey, this could be the secret sauce of getting connections into the real world in order to train better skills to get real work done, is sort of the lens we were thinking through here. So then I look at them and say, okay, like, if this is coming out now, I'm guessing like only 3 or 4 weeks ago when they saw this blowing up, and Sam Altman announced like we're gonna now support MCPs, right? They've just gone out and smashed this out, and it begs the question around strategy, because you talk about the tool calling and like the improvements around this stuff, but it just makes me kind of curious. Like, it feels very reactive, not like they're leading anymore, even in those areas.
Yes, and I said to you earlier today as well, I really think it sort of says that OpenAI don't have something crazy up their sleeve. Like they were sort of alluding a few years ago, like hold me back, guys. Like the government needs to regulate us, or we're accidentally going to invent the AGI that takes over the world, and we won't be the ones in control anymore. To now being a sort of reactive copycat company who has a 3% chance of having the best model. Like, I feel like if they had something better, they would put it out there just to avoid being sort of down in the doldrums like they are now. I just don't think that they are so disciplined. They're like, you know what, guys, we'll wait till October and then we'll unleash the fury. Like, I
But I
really
think
feel
I kind of think it comes back to your earlier point around like this whole idea of like, or like what I was talking about as well, like that whole like what's old is new again in the market, where people are kind of circling back to these other pieces in this app layer. And Altman was interviewed this week saying something like, ChatGPT wants to be I forget the exact quote, but it was basically like they want to be what does it say here? Sam Altman says OpenAI wants to be your core AI subscription, the default interface to intelligence. And I think that,
so he wants to be like Netflix.
yeah, like the Netflix of AI. Imagine pitching that. But anyway, so I think that what it's really saying is, like they are just building the tooling in the app layer now, and circling back to a lot of these ideas, because maybe these models just aren't exponentially getting better. Like GPT-5, which was clearly GPT 4.5 and a failed training run, is like now being reincarnated as like it sounds like just a model router, like a model and tool routing model and layer, which who knows could be really successful and like incredibly powerful.
Well, I think it's necessary. Like, I think that the next advancement definitely has to be the best tool calling, because it's just going to be a thing. Like, I don't think people should underestimate just the scale of the MCP, and soon the agent to agent stuff, where there's going to be MCP servers for everything that you use, like every single application. And if there isn't one for what you do for your business, it's going to be fairly possible to get them made or to make them yourself. So I was already talking to you throughout the week about little ones we're going to make to help ourselves out with things that we do. And so I think that because the protocol is so strong and so well supported, and because the AI models are already so good at working with them, that it's just going to be everything. Like, everything is going to have an MCP server associated with it. And therefore, the ability to be able to, I guess, cut out the noise and know what to do for a particular model or group is going to be so critical. Because if you've got, because remember, the way the MCP servers work is once you access one, it gives you a list of tools, and then you dump that tool information into the model and go, here's all the tools available. So already, if you think about it, there's a problem, because there can be massive conflicts between the different MCP servers. Like, if you install one for Hotmail, you install one for Gmail.
Does that exist still?
My wife uses it.
Oh, okay, there you go. Wow.
Yeah. There's still Hotmail people out there. It's sad but true. And so you connect three different email things. They're all going to virtually have the same tools available to them, right? But they're just different accounts and different things. You can't just indiscriminately throw all those tools at a model, because it's going to be so confusing as to what to do. So already there's a problem to be solved there, which is like, how do I group these tools so it understands what they are? Like, how do I provide extra descriptors on the tools beyond what the MCP gives us so it knows what to do? And then within that, how do I prompt them the best so it knows how to fully utilize all the parameters available with those MCPs? And so it's just simply not going to be possible for someone to connect to 1,000 MCP servers and then expect Claude 3.7 to competently know exactly what to do. Like, there needs to be planning, short-term planning, long-term planning. There needs to be routines. There needs to be systems developed around it to make sure that it actually works. And so I think that this is where major advancement needs to happen, notwithstanding model improvements.
Do you think though, like a GPT-5, call it, or even like Anthropic's new proposed model, though, we're gonna move beyond the because if you think about the consumption of these models from, like, say, you're in the enterprise today and you've been using one of these models for a disparate task in your organization, and you're just like calling and consuming the model, right? When we get to like a GPT-5 or a Claude Ultra or whatever they're going to call it, and they're using tools, right? Because we know O3, right? If you consume it through ChatGPT, they throw in like search and a bunch of other things into the thinking step, which can be annoying because you're like, no, don't do that. But they are doing it. And then, but when you consume it through the API, like, you got to provide your own tools. It's like BYO tools, right? So the question is like, if GPT-5 is like an actual model router and then it has some maybe tooling in it, is that something that then you can consume? Like, do you want to consume the system through an API? Probably not.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one. I wouldn't. I want the models to be models, like, to actually just do the inference and decide when to do certain things, like call tools. I don't feel like them actually running it in the one step is a good thing. Like, I want, like, it can choose to call a tool, but I don't want it to go call the tool, get the result, then do the inference, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that'll be the next interesting scenario to see, like, do these become walled gardens of like, oh, I choose to use this AI system versus this AI system, or do I build my own AI system in-house? Like, that's where I think it gets kind of confusing, because when you start to invest in these AI systems, and I think this is somewhat what Altman was alluding to with his, like, Netflix of AI or subscription, like, once you start developing assistance with a specific like MCP layer and maybe like trained skills, there starts to become some vendor lock-in. Like, you're not going to go into, like, when you go into other AIs, like, I think this is like more broadly why the whole like AI in Google Docs doesn't work terribly well, is because you sort of, like, with your daily driver, you get into a nice workflow of working with it throughout the day. And say you're working on a document, like an announcement or a press release or whatever it is. Like, you've obviously got Gemini sitting in Google Docs, right? I think it's an old version because it stinks. But, like, the real question here is, like, you're sort of in your AI bubble, call it, like your platform of choice. You're going back and forth with it. And then, like, am I really going to go and switch to, like, Gemini's like side window that it might be crippled, doesn't really know me that well? Like, maybe that gets better if you're using,
yeah,
like,
and I
the
think
Gemini.
that'll become less and less the case. These little sidekick BS assistants will become way less useful when they don't have access to all of your MCP tools. Like, you're just going to be like, what's the point? Like, this is just general inference. Like, you can get it on a phone. Like, my kids have it at school now. Like, it's just, there's like a little assistant that'll answer questions everywhere you go now, like, whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
They're just shoving the answers in your face. So yeah, I see those things gradually fading into obscurity, or sorry, they won't go away. They'll be there. It's just you're not going to use it for anything serious. What I do think we're going to see the rise of very soon is MCP hosting, like, as in platforms sort of like Cloudflare, Netlify, that are like, okay, we will host your MCPs. Like, you can install your MCP here, configure it, and then the various apps you use can then consume from there, like OpenAI, Anthropic, blah, 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 but you control them.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then you have-
Cloudflare already is doing this. We did cover it like a week or two ago. They're
Yeah.
already providing
But I
hosting.
think that it goes beyond that, because what I would like to see with it is like the ability to control permissions there. So it's like, okay, I'm only going to give this system permission to access these tools from my Gmail. Like, so this one can have read only access, but this one can have write access and things like that. And then also the idea that I can host my own ones on there. And most importantly, I can host a paid one. So everyone talks about the importance of having private data now. Like, the only true thing that has value anymore is data. So if you do have that data and you can expose it via an MCP, which people can inject into their systems, like for example, in our experimentation, we're using things like PubMed and ArchiveX and different data sources that can be used for research, right? But there are tons and tons of private, like paid journals and paid industry data and various information that could absolutely be setting up public MCPs, but metered, like as in you need to buy credits, but you can then inject these MCPs directly into your system and have all the knowledge. Like, imagine ones for different stock exchanges, for example, or different commodity prices and things like that. Research, proprietary research and things like that, that you can add directly into your systems, so your personal agents and system become that much more powerful.
Well, even like a
And
Bloomberg, like just a Bloomberg having access to all their data in an MCP,
yeah,
and then like just like essentially taking a toll on that data. Yeah, I think that is
because
like
right now, the methodology for getting access to data where there is an MCP would be, okay, I sign up on whatever my service is. Some open source dude has made like an MCP that's like 400 lines of code sitting on GitHub. I've got to clone that repo, run it somewhere, host it on a URL with auth, connect that to my model. Like, that's quite convoluted. Whereas if that same data source, let's say it's Bloomberg or whatever, goes, here's our official MCP SSE URL, you need to provide you need to generate an API key and provide that, and then that will then use up your credits in your system. It's going to be a hell of a lot more simple to connect in that way. And I imagine at some point there'll be some sort of, OAuth process where it's literally just like log into my Bloomberg, go, my agent now has access to that stuff with my credit card. And I really feel like that's what we're going to see throughout the remainder of this year, is those paid MCPs make a huge rise.
you would hope in an ideal world there is some sort of like MCP external. I mean, I guess in those cases you would connect directly to the vendors, but I just hope there's not like a new Apple tax of the world where someone owns the relationship of or the marketplace of MCPs. Like, I hope,
Well, someone's going to try, right? I
yeah,
think that the fact that they're so easy to deploy and host, I think, may preclude that. But at the same time, if I was a company sitting on a large amount of proprietary data that I'd never monetized or hadn't effectively monetized, I'd be seriously thinking about having a monetized MCP now, because like now's the time. Like, I really feel like there's going to be good money made by providing the best tools. And even within the MCPs that already exist, a lot of them are really sort of low effort, first attempts. Like, they're not really well thought through. People are just doing them because no one else has done them yet. And that's not to insult the people who do this work and put it out there. I'm just saying that people putting the effort into making the best MCP servers that are available will do well, because people like us are just going to be like, yep, that's the one. I'm going to use that. Happy to pay for it because it gives the best results.
I guess the question's going to be like, do they provide MCPs or do they provide agent to agent interactions instead? Like,
Mm,
the reason I say that is like, imagine you're sitting on in Australia, like, all people seem to care about is property, and you're sitting on like a lot of property data, right? And you can already access platforms that you can pull this data and stuff. But I think what's more interesting is being able to go back with an agent saying like, hey, here, like if you're a real estate agent, like here's the property that we want to sell in the area. Can you go and assess like how we should price it, how we should market it based on, these various like data points you have. And then another MCP interaction might be go list it everywhere. Just go do all the busy work that I do as a real estate agent. I think that's a good example of like automating the skill, like those repeatable processes that AI
like
can do.
prepare a report for the owner with my branding on it that I can then send to them. Like prepare the advertisement that I'm going to put on the website or whatever it is. Like there'll be a lot of those things that can be just done and then you submit like directly from your control deck.
Yeah. So the question I have is like, does an organization that sits and owns all that data say, I'm going to build the agent that can automate all of those functions, and I'm going to let people consume that agent, in SimTheory and ChatGPT and Claude, like whatever. And so is that the like new paradigm, or is it just they're going to just provide fire hoses to the data, like, lookups to extraction of the data? Obviously, they don't want to provide a fire hose because then someone will just suck in all their data and it's worthless.
Well, I can see cases where I think it already would be valuable. Like if you look at the Twilio MCP server, for example, it is basically someone's just made like a sort of thin layer on top of their existing API, and it's got like a million functions. Like there's just so many things the Twilio MCP can use. And I would argue, I haven't really tried it yet, so I can't really say this for sure, but any model is going to struggle to know how to use those tools in combination to get a particular task done. It's like, set me up an incoming IVR phone line that will accept calls from my help desk and use the following knowledge base. Like in theory, that's something you could be able to do with a Twilio MCP, right? Like, but I would argue there's no chance. Like, there's no chance it's going to do that with just a random series of tool calls. Whereas if you had an agent on their side that had been tuned with those clusters of skills and knowing how to do particular things using that MCP, then it would be great, because then you can go, okay, ask the agent what you want and it will work out how to do it on our side that we control, rather than us relying on your AI to figure out the right combination of tool calls to get these tasks done.
I just wonder here if agent to agent protocol is the right word. It seems more like
service, like it's service,
a skill or service. And like, could this be the future really of like SaaS applications? You're just providing like an endpoint as a service to these core models. And I think, again, this probably goes back to around Altman's comments around OpenAI being like this core subscription, and then everyone else can just build the stuff on top. That's their vision here, is like, well, you just go build the services that plug into our mothership, and we are the Apple tax, or the sort of
tax. I think the problem they have with doing that, because you say, oh, I really hope someone doesn't be the one that controls this and stuff. And I just think the barriers to entry to build a system like this, assuming we always have access to the best models, which it seems like we will, they're just so low. Like, it's not hard to build your own version of this that can do all the same things theirs can, and almost as well, because you've got access to the same models, right? So it's really about your ideas of how to put it together. They have the brand name, they have the big usage and the money, and they've got billions of dollars and whatever. So that helps. But at the same time, you're locked into using only OpenAI models. You're locked into their way of doing things. It can be done in other systems. It can be done in a bespoke way that suits what you're doing in your business. It can be done in a way that's hosted in your private cloud that isn't necessarily sending all of your data and all of your abilities and all of your critical business processes to this evil corporation that's a bunch of liars and psychos and whatever. So there's a lot of the, I guess, advantage of the technology that I can do this privately. I can do my own intelligent system that has all those powers, but I'm in full control, and I can actually get it over the line with my board and my internal security people. They don't have, and they can't. Like, they, at least at the moment, don't seem to be moving in that direction in terms of, hey, here's our corporate solution.
I think the other challenge, is that the company, like, I talk to a lot of companies, and their major concern is you've got, X employee is going to use AI, whether they let them or not. And, they might be working on an email, and in that email, it's got like proprietary details. And they paste that email into like the free version of ChatGPT. and all of a sudden that data is just exposed and can be trained on, and then you might have a junior developer that just like pastes a bunch of code in that might expose an API key or like some sort of proprietary thing. And like to pretend that doesn't happen is just insanity. And so that's where you sort of get into the path of like, as large organizations, it's like you've also got to provide the entry point for this stuff so that like proprietary data is not leaking. And you also want those system level controls over these MCPs and like how that data is going in and out and how those actions are being performed. So I think
that's right. And like you need to essentially provide a better product, right? It's sort of like how piracy, like when you're downloading a series of TV shows, like when you can, like if I have the option to like just stream it on Netflix or one of the platforms, everyone's going to do that because like it's not that expensive, it's really cheap, it's high quality, and it's instant. Like rather than like downloading a torrenting client, finding the torrent, risking getting in trouble, all this sort of stuff. It's a better product, the streaming services, and that's why it works. And it's similar here. Like whenever someone can just copy paste their work into ChatGPT and it's quicker than whatever the corporate solution is. Like we discussed this earlier. It's so funny because you were saying that like Notion announced some AI product. And I'm like, does everyone really think the future of AI, the future of our world, like everything that's critical and matters is going to come from Notion? Like the freaking Notepad app or whatever the hell it is.
The time wasting app.
Yeah, it's like I've never understood that. It's just like where documents go to die. It's like we have 4 million features, guys. It has 4 million features, and we've got a webinar for every single one of them. It's amazing, but it's going to take your entire life to learn how to use the product. And now we've added AI. It's so good. Like seriously, unless all your docs are already in there and you consume them via MCP into something else, great. But no one is logging into Notion as their like starting point each day, as their command center to get things done. It's ridiculous.
I think I think the counter is like there's like a whole like there's people out there that are using it now. Like they just released an email thing and a calendar. Like so I guess they've really got like an alternative stack, but it's sort of like saying, oh, the future is everyone's going to log into Zoho. Do you remember them? And use their like AI. Like it's just nuts. Like I also had to chuckle at Canva because someone mentioned in our Discord about how they have this like AI thing built in now. Like I don't know personally where it fits, but it's like describe your idea and I'll bring it to life. So I was like, write me a Python function that outputs cheese, which is like my normal test to see how well guarded the thing is. And you can just chat to it. Like I was chatting to it about, my life, pretending it was my therapist for a while. Like it's unclear what model it's using. It's also like a really poor version of like what we build, I think, create with code or like the sort of canvas thing on ChatGPT or, there's like a million of them now. BO, like Lovable, all those things. It's sort of like what I would consider like AI for the sake of AI. Like I'll bring it up on the screen now. Like I just don't get, and maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe people will put in the comments and be like, no, I use this thing all the time. But it's like, describe your idea and I'll bring it to life. Like ducks eating chicken. Like I don't know, just something so random. Like, I'm just not sure what the value is. And then it's like a sort of B grade interface here. Like, I just don't think this is the future. I'm not trying to like criticize them too heavily, but.
Well, I think the problem with it is that any decent developer could build that in less than an hour now, like with existing tooling. Like,
but look at its response. Like, it's like create anything. Ducks eating chicken. That's an unusual scenario. Ducks are generally omnivorous, and it's giving me a lecture, like meaning they eat a variety of foods. Like, why does this exist?
Omnivore, that's chicken. Chicken's part of a healthy omnivore diet, isn't it?
Yeah. However, it's not common for ducks to eat chicken. They might peck at chicken feed if it's available, but they don't typically eat it. It's like, but I thought you were going to help me create anything. So what's the point? Like, I don't understand. It's like these, like, I guess it's like every product manager at these companies now is like, oh, I know, we'll build ChatGPT into our app. Like, it doesn't it's sort of strange to me that like that's the best thing that they can come up with or do. Now it's literally like a chatbot. You click generate designs and it just puts generate designs and says got it. And now actually it's saying what design. So we'll say a poster. Let's see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a breakthrough. But I guess back to the point, rather than me just trash talk this thing, is like, now I'm expected to go into Notion AI's chat. Now I'm at Canva's AI chat. Now I'm in Atlassian's AI chat. Like, I think this is why, in a way, having your AI client separate, like where you're in a ChatGPT like interface and then you might interact with that app a little bit, but I just don't really see this going
to me,
away.
A much better interface for Canva, because like they produce really nice reports and posters and those kind of things, right? Would be, I have an MCP that's the Canva one that's maybe a paid one, where I can be like, okay, I've done my deep research, I produced this paper, I now need to present this at an event that I've got coming up. Make me an epic presentation that like design wise looks amazing. It best articulates this information and follows through in a logical structure. And then bang, I get my Canva download that is this incredible, usable thing, right? Like, to me, that would be the advantage of that. So for example, as now the text to image models are okay at text, but not consistently, and certainly not the kind you would need to make like a poster. If Canva could nail that, like, okay, we are the poster MCP, we can produce it based on what a big chat history or whatever it is. Now make a poster that articulates this information, and they can do it in one shot. To me, that's really valuable.
And to be clear, my criticism is not that I don't think this sort of Copilot style chat with a design where you're barking orders at the computer. Obviously that excites me. Like, I've done videos on it. I think it's the future, like sort of Minority Report style, where you're designing, talking to the computer, right?
Yeah.
The problem is, I just don't know about, like, the idea for me is a background task. Like, hey, I'm working with my sort of co-working assistant throughout the day, and I'm like, hey, we need to prepare for this launch. Can you go on, based on like what we're talking about, come up with like a press release, like social media banners and stuff? And it's like, great, I'll go and use the Canva like MCP to do that. Then it's like, ding, I'm done. And then you can see what it's come up with. And then if you just don't want to go back and forth with it, you click and you're like, editing Canva. It opens up a new tab. Now I'm in Canva and I'm still using the designer interface. Like, I do want like pixel perfect control at that point.
Yeah, but this gets you like that much further down the road.
Yeah, and to me, like, you would be far better if you were Canva investing in having the best MCPs on earth, so that your product becomes just like baked in as the design layer in like every AI product under the sun.
Yes.
Rather than this like, oh, we're going to build oops. ChatGPT. I'm so sorry for people that had kids listening in cars, because I have no intention of editing that out. I'm too lazy. But yeah, so I think that I don't see it happening. Like, I can't, like, would I ever go to this, like, to go, oh, I need to do the thumbnail for our latest podcast YouTube. Come up with the worst possible thumbnail on the planet. Please. I don't know. Like, I think there's a reason GUI and point and click won, right? Like, it's just a better interface for something.
Yeah, that's right. Because like a chat interface just isn't going to get the same fidelity. So you're getting like a sort of worse output in a slower method just because it's AI.
Not to mention, you also lose context. Like, if I now switch over and go, I'm going to use Canva AI to work on my marketing materials for my launch, like, you immediately lose the context with your daily driving assistant, where you've been talking about them with your marketing assistant, like how you're going to like strategize and kind of build out this campaign. Then you go over to its chat and it's like, I'm a dummy. Like, I don't even, like, I'm educating you about ducks eating chicken over here. Like, So anyway, that's my rant on that. But it is funny, like, when you see all these announcements, they just keep coming every other day. We even get pitched on some of these announcements to talk about them on the show quite frequently. Like, oh, hey, we're announcing our, like, stupid AI chatbot. And it's just, you realize that, like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, and this, like, AGI is achieved through Canva's AI design tool. Like that's where it all comes from.
Yeah.
So
I don't think
Chris,
so.
what do you think the state now is of the year of agents? The year of agents 2025. Where are we in the agency? Are you using agents on a daily basis to automate your work?
Well, I think my thinking is sort of necessarily clogged by the MCP world because that's what we're working on. But I can absolutely see the value of it. Where I think what's happened, and we talked about this before, is that as you said, what old is new again, right? Like in the sense that all of these ideas were spread around like a year ago, like, oh, it could do this, it could do that. And I think that it just takes time for people who are gradually beginning to trust AI and use it in their workflow to see the power of if it could do this, then that would be immensely valuable for me. And therefore, now everybody's ready for this next iteration. And I think what I'm seeing by working with it every day and actually using it is things around I need it to really, just like we saw with like memory, because you know how we talk about when you have a long session going with an agent, we know a lot of people get protective over specific chats, even because they're like, this one knows me the best and it knows what I'm working on. And it's precious. I absolutely must keep this chat going because it's getting my work done. I think it's going to be the same with the MCP tool calling in the sense that, okay, it knows it needs to ask me about this one. It knows what I mean when I ask it to do this thing, and we're going to get these sort of like trained states that it reaches where it's like this can now actually do part of my job for me. Like I can actually use this combination of tools to get this thing that was a pain before, or I wasn't doing enough of it, or I wasn't doing it consistently enough, and it can now do it for me. And I think that the real key here is providing an interface, and I don't think even we know, even though we're thinking about it, exactly how that works yet. An interface that is conducive to that, that is able for people to articulate, here's what I want from this combination of tools. Like, this is how I want it to work. We try it out a few times, we adjust it, it works. Now I've got this. And I think that to some degree will include computer use, browser automation, MCPs. It's going to be a combination of all of these things. And I think the model's improving in the background in terms of their context retention and their being able to like think through the approach they take in planning is going to be a big thing. So I think that anything that works around the person who's operating it, describing what's needed, and then the AI being able to come up with consistent short and long term planning around that, and then remembering that for future iterations is going to be way more important than any model improvements.
Yeah, I just think we're at a point where there's like, at least the consumer or a lot of people I talk to, because of all the hype around agents and agency, and you've got Eric Schmidt out on his Still Relevant tour telling us all about the future. It's reached a point where I think a lot of the practical applications of the technology right now are being lost around this idea that it still is predominantly human in the loop, but it can now go off and do real work for you. And it can utilize these tools to get a lot done and make the individual worker much more productive once they get used to it. And I think at first a lot of people are threatened by it because they're like, oh, it's coming for my jobs, because, that's the current narrative. And the reality is, with the technology today, I don't think that that's far from correct at all. I mean, like literally this week, the Klarna dude, remember him? Where I built the Klarna CRM with a recursive loop.
Yep.
So he came out and said, oh, they're hiring humans again for support because it wasn't, turns out, turns out the AI agents weren't that great at pleasing their customers for their payday loan scam. So I think that, I think that like the promise right now, or the thing that excites me about it, is just when you are able to just get it to do like those somewhat agentic tasks for you in the background, where you can see it going off and working and getting something done for you that would have taken you quite a lot of time. And it is saving you time, and you become addicted to that, and you don't really remember the previous way of working once you start working that way. And then I see that transformation in organizations occur all the time when it's like the team's skeptical for whatever reason. They're like, oh no, it's going to threaten us. Then they start using it. They're like, hang on, this makes my job much more pleasant because I can focus on what I like doing. And the usage goes through the roof as a result of that. So to me, that's where we're at. That's the 2025 play. If you can just get your team or your organization or yourself personally into that state, then you're doing something right. And that's where things are. They're not at this stage where there's this like, autonomous agent going off and like doing all this like fancy crazy stuff or replacing a worker. It's just augmenting workers in a lot of ways. I think that's somewhat where we're at. I think that you gave that example before about like the triggers around like the sales inbox and then it making some decisions based on being trained some skills as a part of your job. We've talked about that on the show before. I think that is something that will increasingly be seen and come this year, where it's something that organizations maybe look at and start to begin to implement. But I think it's going to take like quite a while before that becomes the norm.
But I mean, isn't it funny to think that isn't happening now? Like, other than things where a programmer has gone and hard coded a process that uses AI, we don't have any systems where you can reliably create reproducible tasks that will do work that a person would have previously done. Like, that's kind of crazy to me. We know the technology's there. And
well, I mean,
think,
some people say like Devon, but I would just argue that's an AI system where you're still giving it commands. It's not like some autonomous system that's just running in a loop like successfully.
Yeah, and that uses a fair bit of AI. Like, I don't mean any process like we see with Zapier and things like that. Things can be automated, right? That are completely consistent. But I mean where there's decision making involved. So it's actually adding value in terms of its ability to make good decisions, not just automating a process the way a programmer could.
And it's not like the model's like an executable file you double click on and then it just runs a program right now. Like, it's not at that point.
Yeah.
But it could be. It could be soon. Look, next week it's going to be interesting. We've got Google I/O. I'm sure OpenAI will try and trump whatever it is that Google announces, because they always do, because they're petty like that. And then I'm sure thereafter, maybe 2 weeks, we'll see Anthropic's new models, which just simply won't be in time for you to lose your bet. And I think we will end the show today somewhat where we started, which is like, you're probably going to lose your bet.
Yeah, should I bet more?
Double down on the loss.
Dollar cost average. I don't know. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. But good luck to the people who are beating me on there, and we'll see how we go.
Now, one final thing, we were going to talk about improving RAG and results in the real world through like tool calling and processes. Should we save that to next week, or do you want to?
Well, just my thoughts around this. So, one of the things that really was a big focus in the early days and then has sort of fallen by the wayside is how a company or a person's information that they load up, that they know they want a particular assistant to know as their background knowledge, is used. Now, as context size increased, you can often just include all of that information in the prompt. So the system has access, like in the case of a 1,000,000 token prompt, it can just know all the stuff that you've told it and take that into account. But as research tools have come about and improved, they actually go a step beyond just like shoving all the information in there, where they can actually make decisions about which pieces of information are relevant, how it's going to cite that information, how it's going to take that into account. And my thinking with you, with some of these papers that have come out, like the one you're showing at the moment, is there's obviously better techniques for leveraging that information in terms of research. So I think as we see improved MCP usage, I actually think that the paradigm may shift in the sense that rather than stuffing all of the information into every single request that's made to an AI model, it might make more sense to have that information available as a research module where it can actually research your own information as well as the external information. And the way we look at these things is different. And that extends to things like agent memories and things like that, where it can actually have previous conversations, long-term memories, all available as tool calls that it either has to call or can call as part of its process.
Yeah, and this is where I get a bit conflicted because you sort of see that stuff I mentioned earlier with O3 calling tools as part of its thinking step, but then them even admitting in their own research report that it causes more hallucination. Like it's like hallucinates more through that like reasoning part. But it kind of makes me wonder if you go back to what you were saying around like a 3.7 sonnet, how it's still able to sort of step through with the MCPs. If you have the right MCPs being able to sort of verify and collect the right context along the way, can that vastly improve the sort of context arrangement when you're dealing with a large body of data, like finding the right pieces of the puzzle to put in there to get the answer that people want, or at least have the right sources and relevance, and also completely reduce hallucinations. And there was another paper during the week saying that increased tool use does lead to reduced hallucinations in this particular example. I don't have it available to quickly bring up, but it does seem to be a little bit of convergence around these ideas, like this idea of using the tools to reduce the hallucinations, using the tools to get better performance out of retrieving the right context.
Yes. And I think that this again comes around to, it's really going to be around configuring assistants or whatever we call them to know, like, this one is my serious one. This one absolutely must consult and research this information before answering any question because it needs to be an expert in this area of law or this particular thing. Whereas this guy, he can look it up if he wants, but it doesn't really matter. Like if I just say hi, just say hi. But the other one, it's like hi, and it references its hi message, like it's got to take it damn seriously. It must use these tools. And so I really think the MCP concept is very cool, but what it needs is decisions made around it in terms of when and how those tools are called, because I really think that's going to make a huge difference. Like if you could say to a business, like, guaranteed, if you work with this assistant, it is going to consult your internal policies, is going to consult your particular area of expertise for your business, your internal knowledge base. It's also going to do external paper research using the following sources, and it's going to reference them in its answer, and it's going to produce reports that come up on your letterhead as a PDF. Like those kind of guarantees around a particular assistant. And it's like when you're in that mode, you are in formal research mode for my company, and you're going to produce certified documents that are like quality, that we can use, in the team, and we can trust them. I think that's a major, major advancement, far beyond any model improvements. And we have the technology to do this now, just not the tooling.
Yeah, it just seems like we've said many times before, it's just about time now to implement these ideas and make them work. And I think in one way, there's somewhat of that slowdown in the intelligence of models, or the perceived slowdown in that they're all getting relatively similar with different strengths and weaknesses, but relatively similar. It really does come down to that system and tooling now. And like, that's going to take a while to play out. I don't think it's just some magic period where it just comes together that quickly. And as we've seen from that rumor around OpenAI, like sort of, I would say pivoting and slamming hard into MCPs because of the pickup it was getting around with Anthropic, the future's not written yet. Like there's a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah, and my suggestion would be OpenAI, like from the leaked screenshots we've seen, having a bunch of connectors is not enough. Like it's cool and everything, like it'll be fun novelty to play with, but you, the user, is still going to have to be very, very specific in your prompting to get it to do useful things with those connectors there. Like I'm sure it'll get incredible hype and everyone will really love it until they actually try to do real work with it and realize that it goes far beyond just connecting a bunch of different things.
Yeah, well, we'll see it playing out. It's going to be an interesting week next week. We'll bring you all of the coverage. It will be average coverage, and we probably won't cover everything correctly.
We'll just skip some things to keep the average down.
Yeah, mostly we'll cover all the cringy parts of Google I/O's presentation. But hopefully we'll get some new exciting things. And it'll like the thing I'm most looking forward to next week is, will we get the sort of like pissy reaction from OpenAI where they're like, we have something to announce to you guys, and try and steal the limelight. Like I think that for me is going to be interesting. It's always fun to watch these guys like battle it out for X supremacy.
Yeah, I can almost guarantee you that it's going to be like, Google makes their announcement, the next day something else is announced, and so on and so forth.
It's honestly though why I always hesitate to do like a live stream after Google I/O, because I'm like, we've got to wait 24 hours for OpenAI's thing so we can talk about it on the next episode.
Just do one episode a day until we run out of news.
Yeah. All right. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please consider leaving a review wherever you listen, Apple, Spotify, wherever. And if you're on YouTube, please feel free to drop in your toxic comments below. All right. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.